Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 6th of March, comes to you from London. And remember, you can watch Charts Today just by signing up at chartstoday.com. You'll get alerted every time Charts Today is released, and that's where it's launched first. Occasionally, I put it on Twitter or LinkedIn, but basically, the best place to get it is chartstoday.com. Now, we start by looking at the markets. We see here quite a bit of red on the screen. Friday was actually quite a strong recovery in US equities. That was really quite interesting. We saw the Nasdaq really just climbing there, and if we look at US 10-year yields, they really pulled back. So we've got a lot of uncertainty about this whole inflationary environment. We saw yields really climbing and activating this upside target to 530, but then we saw this pullback, and again this downside target then generated. So short term we're falling, medium term we're rising, and of course long term we've got this very, very big target. So a lot of uncertainty. We've got the US Federal Reserve Chairman speaking to Congress this week, so that'll be interesting. And we've got employment jobs numbers out in the US at the end of the week. And of course, we'll be waiting to see what the Fed does in a couple of weeks' time. So really, the markets are starting to price in that inflation is going to be a longer term thing. It's no longer transitory. So basically, markets are getting used to that higher inflation environment. So we start by looking at currencies, then we'll look at global stock markets, commodities, and last of all, energy. And remembering, of course, I'm running here on Refinitiv Icon. In Updata, I'm actually running on dozens of different data feeds. You can run Updata on Bloomberg, on Icon, you name it. There's lots of different data services, over dozens of different data services that we're compatible with. So just plug it in and run it on top of what you've already got, including free data services like Yahoo as well. Now, looking at the weekly chart, this is my weekly, my daily, my 60-minute chart, my long-term, medium-term, and short-term view of the market, and the corresponding point and figure targets. So I've got this long-term, medium-term, and short-term view, and being able to look at those multiple time horizons is absolutely vital. So we see how the dollar recovered. We did have a little bit of a week last week where we hit cloud resistance from the other side, so we found cloud support and we're in the cloud, so it's quite interesting on that weekly, and also on the daily how we're just hitting the resistance there on the daily cloud as well. And we see here on the 60-minute chart we're fairly flat on the dollar, and it's little change today. That means, of course, that euro dollar is the inverse of that, hitting cloud resistance on the weekly chart, finding cloud support on the daily, medium term, and just edging a little bit higher against that dollar. We've got a target to 108 there. If you're trading currencies, you really do need to use the 1 minute point and figure targets. Sterling is actually a little bit weaker. We had quite positive numbers out in the UK today, but not enough to really keep the currency rising. We just couldn't hold that 120 level against the dollar, so looking a little bit weaker there. And interestingly, we've got the Aussie dollar. That's up today, but the Reserve Bank of Australia making a decision on interest rates tonight. 0.25% is what that market is pricing in. So be interesting to see, but we are seeing here how sterling has been outperforming on the dollar, and that's a rate that I'm watching quite closely at the moment, with a big exchange due to come shortly for me. Looking at Bitcoin, we're sitting at 22,300, so we have fallen back. We are still holding on the daily cloud. We did see big falls there on Friday in Bitcoin, pushing us into that really clear negative territory. So at the moment, it'll be interesting to see whether this upside target of 32,000 is deactivated with a fall through 22,000, 21,800. So watch for that. We've got downside targets, and of course, it's a very mixed picture there. As we mentioned, the Nasdaq is higher. The S&P actually broke back above 4,000. The Nasdaq not quite enough to get it back above the cloud on the short term. Just interesting to see how the market's becoming really quite volatile in terms of where is the trend. We had this recovery, strong recovery this year. That's been unwinding. Will we see a move higher and activate that upside target? That's the big question. But of course, we have been in bearish territory on US equities now for several months, and we've highlighted that below the weekly cloud just means we're long-term bearish on US equities. Very interesting to see that the futures today are completely flat, so the market is really not yet giving us any heads up as to where it's going to open. And the FTSE future down 0.2%, so the FTSE actually looking much better than US indices on the long-term chart above the cloud, having made new all-time highs, but not really just managing to hold that. And if we look at the DAX in Germany, very flat here as well. All markets really waiting for the US to open. Japan was up 0.9%, looking very strong there, breaking above that cloud and pushing to new multi-month highs. So that's really important for Japanese investors, and we're seeing upside targets. Of course, the Bank of Japan is going to be a major one to watch too, with their decision on rates. So that's going to be interesting as well. Looking at the other markets in Asia, China and Hong Kong relatively flat. The Sensex in India actually up 0.2%. Again, just holding above the cloud on that long term, medium term, just struggling a little bit. We'll look at the energy mix in a minute. I've got the Aussie market, of course, to look at. That's up 0.2% ahead of that interest rate decision in Australia. Market pricing in a 0.25% rise, as we said. Looking at some of the commodities, we've got sugar, that's down 1%. We've got wheat down 0.5%. So really quite significant there. We're seeing that move below the cloud. Gold sitting at 1850. We did see a little relief rally last week, back off that 1800 level, and really just getting back into that 1850s. That's good news. We've got a target to 1869. Good news for gold bulls. This 1 to 2100 is still in train, and if we make it there, we deactivate all the downside targets, and we'll be looking for a new upside target. We've got one there to 2150. Taking a look at silver, we're still below the $22 mark, quite significantly below at $21. And looking at the other precious metals, we're down quite heavily. Palladium down 2.4%, for example. Copper down 1.35%. So it's just struggling to really break through the cloud there on the long term, medium term looking a little bit better, and just short term turning down there. We talked about bond yields. That's really quite significant that we're seeing that pullback, but that does potentially set us up, of course, for the next target. So that's going to be really quite interesting to watch. Long term, we've got 5.25% and then 9%, and that just really implies that inflation is going to keep being an issue. Looking at Apple, we're above that 150 mark. Remembering 130 is the key level for Apple. So just all eyes really on tech stocks after that quite significant rally that we saw in tech stocks on Friday in the US. Looking at the energy mix, a lot of red on the screen this morning. So looking at Brent Crude, first of all, we're 1.5% lower. We were bullish last week, not so much this week. We had that big jump on Friday on rumours that the United Arab Emirates were going to leave OPEC. The market's now discounting that. We're seeing US nat gas down 11%, so that's really quite a big fall. Having fallen below the cloud, we've got these downside targets. If you're trading US nat gas, keep an eye on those 1 minute targets, really important. Coal sitting at 131.50, API 2, so again, bearish below the cloud on both charts. Downside targets, keep an eye on those. And if we look at, first of all, look at emissions, up 1% this morning. We do see this characteristic when gas and power fall, emissions rise, and we are seeing that 93, 92, 70 level was quite a significant support level there. Keep an eye on your 1 minute charts. Nothing doing at the moment, but they will kick in. Just watch that price action. TTF, we put a poll out this morning on how low it will go. Of course, there are targets. We will put a report out to clients. There are targets at lots of different levels below where we are. So it's really probably not the bottom. And we'll put that report out to clients later today. Looking at NBP, that's down 4.5% as well, making new lows there. That 115 level, well and truly gone now. We've got targets even below 100, so that's going to be really quite interesting to watch. And last of all, German power. A look at German power on the EEX, and we see here that just falling as well. So again, making new lows. So energy markets still falling despite it being pretty damn cold in the UK at the moment, but the markets are basically just constantly reassessing the situation. That's it for today. Keep an eye on those charts and those 1 minute targets especially, and keep an eye out for our gas report. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.